Welcome to Voice of Hope podcast. As promised, we're going to help you with stories of inspiration, hope, adversities, victories to help you rise, overcome, and live your full potential. But guess what? I told you all the time that I can't do this alone. So we'll bring other voices in to help you realize that, yes, your stories and your things that you have gone through, it's real. But guess what? In spite of it all, there is something that you have inside of you to share, to bring inspiration to others. And that's what our special guest is going to help us do this moment. But before we go into that awesome moment with our guest, Win Charles, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. I just want to thank all my listeners and visitors who have been with us financially and just being with us, sharing and subscribing and all of that. We just want to thank you so much. Because of you, our voices collectively is reaching the masses in the production of more and more podcasts. And guess what? If you're just dropping by or someone shared this link with you and you like what's going on around this little corner, feel free to chip in $1 or $2. Hey, we ain't gonna say no, because it said the more the merrier, okay? But this is the internet and you don't have to do a thing. But one thing I can assure you is that this word, these voices, these messages of hope is going to reach the people. So in spite of it all, we're gonna reach, we're gonna serve, because that's what we do. So we welcome you. We welcome $1 or $2 or whatever is on your heart to help us with production. So with no further ado, let's go right into our special guest, Win Charles. And you know what also makes her super special today? It's her birthday. And before we got on mic, without further ado, Win Charles, welcome and happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. And for those of you who don't know, I had the pleasure of working with Miss Marsha.
Oh my gosh, you're not telling me so quick.
Well, yeah, I'm telling you guys so quick. I had the pleasure of working with Miss Marsha long before she started Voices of Hope. And so
oh my God.
we're going to get into that.
Oh my goodness.
Into that. And so if you could see her behind the scenes off mic, yeah, you would understand the spicy Jamaican. Let's just put it that way. And yeah, and Marsha is right in saying, if someone handed this link to you, please subscribe. Please follow us in Apple Podcast. And please just continue listening and supporting to all these independent podcasters. I happen to host 2 podcasts. One is the Artwork of CP, and the other one is Winning Cup, which Marsha is going to be on one of these days.
Oh my gosh. And, you're not doing your own introduction around here. You ain't introducing yourself. Okay, listeners, guess what? Win Charles, she's an advocate. She's an advocate for cerebral palsy. But not only that, she's also was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. She's a podcast host. Oh my gosh, she's going to get into all of it. I told her from the beginning, I know I can't do this justice, but I'm going to roll a little piece of the red carpet out. She's an author. She's going to tell us about her book. She was born in Aspen. It's an Aspenite. No, she moved to Arizona. Oh, a boat of information is going to be dumped on you. So don't go nowhere. Stick right in, pause if you have to pause, and let's listen in. Welcome, Win Charles.
I love it. I love it. And for those of you that don't know, I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy 34 years ago today. A little hard to believe, but as it's June 22nd. So if I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy 34 years ago today. And basically what cerebral palsy is a lack of oxygen injury to the brain at birth. And no, it's not genetic. No, it's not genetic. No, I am not missing a chromosome like Nathan is. No, it's just a lack of oxygen injury at birth, and it's a neurological condition. I have ataxia spastic cerebral palsy, and I also have what they documented it as is a mixed bag of cerebral palsy, but really it's a
You said mixed bag?
Cerebral palsy. Yes, they documented it as a mixed bag. And so it's really ataxia spastic cerebral palsy. And I was super lucky to be diagnosed with it in 1987, June 22nd, 1987 to be exact. And I was really lucky because typically by the time you're in the early grades, pre-K and kindergarten, kids start missing their milestones. And then the parents start freaking out. And I was really lucky that by the time I was in preschool, that and people will tell you, I had the story goes, I had opinions back then. I'm a loudmouth back then. And people will tell you that I'm a loudmouth.
You don't stop being a loudmouth yet. You're still a loudmouth, Win. And that's why it takes a loudmouth. It takes a loudmouth to be an advocate.
A loudmouth to an advocate. Yeah, exactly. So I was lucky enough that I went to a private school. I was lucky enough that I went to a private school. That private school was instrumental in my life to say that we had really small classes.
Yes.
And so therefore I was able to teach about disabilities, but what people don't know is how I became an empathetic kid was I had a friend of mine get diagnosed with childhood leukemia. And so, yeah. And no, her parents did not abuse her. They didn't touch her. They didn't touch a fly, one. And so how we found out is she got bruising all over her body. And they had to rush her to Children's Hospital.
Right.
And she passed away my preschool year. So imagine me trying to learn my ABCs and learn how to function as a normal kid and deal with grief. I started dealing with grief when I was in preschool, basically. Life got thrown at me when I was in preschool. And a lot of people don't know that I had to learn adult concepts at the age of 3. And so we were all grief stricken by this person's passing. And so I literally had to learn adult concepts at the age of 3. And that really shaped me to the person I am today, whereupon I say, the story goes, I would say, hello, how are you to the adults? and they would look at the 5-year-olds, says 6-year-olds, like you said, what? Hello, how are you? How's it going? Because I had to learn adult concepts in a kid's way, and I still haven't gotten over the grief aspect of losing a childhood friend in preschool. I mean, when it comes to grieving, I grieve really heavy when time is right. And unfortunately, I didn't get to grieve the loss of my mom or the loss of my dad. So I just had to be the stoic rock and move on. But basically, cerebral palsy is not my condition. Cerebral palsy is my gift. Oh, well, unfortunately, God love her, and people know this. My mom kind of said, "You have CP, now go have a good day." And at the time, I was in 7th grade, and at the time, I was shocked. I knew I was different at the age of 6. I also knew I was gay at the age of 6. But the bigger issue is I knew I had CP, because when you're trying to kick a soccer ball and the soccer ball goes sideways and you almost go sideways with the soccer ball, it's not fun. So I knew something that was different when I was trying to kick that soccer ball. And so later on in high school, I managed to Google what is CP, and I got the results of a lifetime. I thought, oh boy, that's what I have to deal with. And then later, fast forward, I got emotionally and physically abused in 2019, June 23rd, 2019. So yeah, I got emotionally and physically abused, and that was fun. And then I decided to ask a physical therapist, would you consider cerebral palsy a bone and joint condition, or would you consider cerebral palsy a neurological condition? They go, honey, you have a neurological condition now, deal with it. And so, yeah, that is that. And the reason why I am trying to now reinvent my life since March, is because I almost, and Marsha was a witness to this, I almost got killed by carbon monoxide. Because
before you go into Win, let's go back a little bit. So you stating that the diagnosis that you got, it's more of a gift than anything else. One thing that we know is that when women get diagnosed with a developmental diagnosis for the kids, they often feel like it's the end of the world. They often feel like the child will have no future. There's no hope. Doctors will tell us they can terminate, or the child gonna depend on people for the rest of their life. But that's not so for you when you are right now living on your own, right, in your own place, in a community that is structured for
yes,
who's unique.
yes.
What do you want to say to our parents right now who she's just probably getting the news that the child's going to be different, or she's parenting and living in fear and worry? What would you say to them?
I would say, don't believe the doctors. Do not believe the doctors, and do not get pulled into a conference room to discuss your child's health. if you have to be standing in the middle of the NICU and you have to be standing in the middle of the NICU holding your child, watching them bleed in the incubator, do it, because the worst feeling in the world is getting pulled into a conference room and not being able to see your loved one and then getting the diagnosis. So always trust your instincts as a parent. If you don't feel something is right, speak up to those doctors.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing too, or probably I could add, is that the diagnosis is just a label. It is not your child.
Yeah,
Because here, Win Charles, the perfect example of someone who, even though you have a diagnosis, you're having a great life. You've gone on to be an advocate. You're a podcast host. Yeah.
yeah. And I choose to live my life that way. And I choose to be a great shining example for others.
Wow. That's powerful, and that's very encouraging to me. Tell us, bring us on a journey of how you navigate. I know your both parents gone on passed on some time ago. No, your dad was like 2 years ago, 3 years,
2 years ago.
3 years ago
Yeah,
that your dad
2 years.
went on.
2 years.
2 years ago,
Yeah.
and your mom went on.
My
But
mom,
how do you navigate the difference? How do you do this?
um, how do I navigate the difference? Well, I was 23 years old when I when I had my second loss in my own life. As I said to you guys, I had already experienced loss as a young child
Yes.
and of a dear friend. So me going through grief, this is why I need to be really held. And this is why I shut down. I don't grieve. I shut down. And then I either lose it half the time. And this is why because I experienced grief at such a young age, this is why I am a expert at grief. And this is what the difference between losing my mom and losing my dad. Well, they died of two different diseases, number one. And my mom fought a battle for a month, and my dad fought a battle for 4 days.
Mm.
4 days. And well, he fought it longer than that, but
Yes.
he fought the final battle for 4 days. And I wanted so badly to give him a hug goodbye, but that was too painful. And he landed up passing away of undiagnosed lung cancer / organ failure / nursing home neglect and abuse. And because at the time they weren't taking care of him either. And so basically I shut down. I had about 10 people filtering through my house on May 19th. And yes, my aide was there on May 19th. And yes, she knew the family emergency that was going on. But I became the stoic rock. And I have always been the stoic rock since losing my classmate in the 90s, because the thing with me is I take things in, I process things, and then I process things, and then it goes into my filter, and I process good news, I process bad news in 24 hours. So the thing with me, that's why I always became a stoic rock, because I have always been the rock for others when I've been grieving. I will always hug people.
Right.
I will always wrap my arms around people as they burst into tears in my arms. And I will always be the stoic rock when it comes time to grieve. Now, granted, I am trying to reinvent my own life as it stands today. And because I almost got killed by carbon monoxide.
Right.
So I had to grieve what people were not doing for me. And
Wow.
I had to grieve as to what people were doing for me and what people were not doing for me.
Right.
And that was a challenge and a half.
Challenge. You know, it, I can't imagine how challenging it must have been, given that you have lost both parents. But for a parent right now or a young adult, what would you say to them if they're in a similar situation, like you are, dealing with grief, having to navigate life on your own and so on? What do you say to that
I
listener?
I would say get a good support team around you. Get a good support team around you enough so that you could support your child in the way that they need to be supported.
Wow.
So it doesn't need to be aids in paid capacity. It could be a friend that supports your child. It could be a different team member that supports your child. I was lucky enough that during that time of me almost losing my life,
Yes.
and I was lucky enough to have two, actually, three team members um, pull me out of that situation. And yeah, four actually, four in total. The three of them actually showed up. They actually all showed up by us, and
Right.
and so
We're gonna go deep in that. We're gonna go a little bit more in it.
yeah,
But I love where we're going right here. I'm seeing decision. Your parents get the news and the decision that we're gonna go on this journey with our child. Because you're an only child too, right? And then not only the decision, I see advocacy, right? And then you also embodied advocacy for yourself and what you're doing right now. And even, when you lost your friend in the early years and you have to take on that role of understanding how to deal with this adult stuff. How do we grieve and so on? And then here you land on one of the words that's like my trigger word right there is community. And I love how you pointed out that there's basically four strong peoples in your community. And this is one thing that I, encourage people that you don't need a big community, especially when you have a child who's unique, right? Most of the people around us they're gonna be standing on the sideline and already casting judgments, right? So
yeah.
I love all your community for you was strong. I know it was strong because I was there. Okay. You get to talk about that. I know it
Yeah.
was strong community, but it doesn't need to be big, but it needs to be strong and it needs to be wide. Just tell us a little bit more, because I know we're gonna go into the challenges that you faced and what happened when your community has to really come on out.
And I agree with you. It doesn't have to be a big community, and you don't have to make a big deal. You don't have to load handicapped accessible van and do everything for that child. You just have to sit with that child and let them respond in their own time.
I think I love it. I love it, Win. You said it perfectly. And one thing I love about just having a conversation and the dreams and the stuff we always have behind the scene as you talk about behind the scenes. You get to talk about behind the scenes. Is it's we don't have to get to that place where we give up on a child because society has already put a label on them.
Yeah.
Right. So as parents, we have to make a decision that we're gonna be there for a child, come hell or high water, because who you were meant to be, it's inside. When Charles right here, our guest, is a perfect example. Cerebral palsy does not determine your life, whatever the diagnosis is right now. When share with us that moment, that challenging moment when you could have not been here.
Well, unfortunately, you witnessed to that challenging moment, Marsha. And unfortunately, there was 4 people witness to that challenging moment. And I basically had to call the cops to save my own life. And when you call an emergency number to save your own life, you know you're in trouble. Because what happened, and you guys can look it up, it's public knowledge, is that Aspen had a heat outage. Someone got to the city of Aspen's pipes and wrote Earth First on them and shut the heat down to Aspen. Mm-hmm. So not only did we have the able-bodied trying to deal with it, we had the disabled trying to deal with it. And then it got progressively worse during the day. And I am sitting up in my living room at my house in Aspen at the time. And so I was sitting up in my living room thinking, now what? What are we going to do? And the next thing I know, I have the cops on the line. And I basically said, I have cerebral palsy, I need heat, I need running water, I am a woman in distress. And then the next thing I know is that, and at this time, I am so losing my mind that I scream at you because I didn't know what to think. Every time I tried calling Holy Cross Alexa, they would say, no upstates, no upstates, no upstates. And so finally, when I called cops, it was late in the afternoon. And they came. The Black Hills Energy and Holy Cross Electric came, and you met them at the door. And you basically said, we have a woman in distress. And so, yeah, that was the majority of that. And then they tell both of us that my boiler was about to explode. And if I stay in this house any much longer, I would be dead. And so it's like, okay, what do we do? What do we do now? So I happened to call 2 other team members who, by the grace of God, were able to get me out. And then you gotta remember, you guys, this was at New Year's 2021. So 2020, end of 2020, the beginning of 2021. And I'm like, okay. So we Marsha and I, Marsha self over to a hotel which when we got there, they had no heat. They gave us a space heater, and they were very kind. They had no heat, and they had no heat, but at the same time, we somehow knew that everything was going to be okay.
Mhm.
And so the boiler gets fixed. Well, in the meantime, I make phone calls while I'm waiting for the boiler to get fixed because I don't want to deal with house maintenance anymore. Which, by the way, my house is being sold. We're in the process of selling my house, and I don't know where I'm going to go. All I know is I'm going to move out of Aspen. So in a hotel room, while I had time on my hands, and when I was in the recording podcast, I made a phone call to Phoenix, Arizona, and that phone call would change my life forever, unbeknownst to me. And so it's interesting how the universe works. As you're going through one challenge, the universe pushes another door. The universe says, okay, we get you to a stable place, but we also bring boxes, literally and figuratively, we bring boxes into your life so you can pack up and move. And people are like, what? You did this in the midst of a hotel room? Yeah. And so my team met with me again, and they said, do you really want to move? And I said, yes, please, because I wasn't ready to deal with the upkeep and the maintenance of our house. And so I said, yes, please. And I noticed that the cost of living / the cost of care was
Mhm.
going up, not going down. So I had to take the leap of faith and literally move in the midst of a pandemic. I have been plugged down at Lunazol since March 19th, and
Wow.
turns out I've found my forever home. But it's interesting how the universe works.
Win Charles is our very special guest. It's also special because it's her birthday. She's an advocate for persons with cerebral palsy. She was also diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Here, Win is sharing some of the biggest challenge, which I would think you said this is the biggest challenge you have ever faced, is when you come close to the doors of death. I know a couple of times you mentioned Marsha. And when you say Marsha, I know you're talking about Marsha Wygum, this host. But what most of our guests are the person who does join us don't realize is when you say that and you refer me in the situation right there, at the time, right in the middle of the pandemic and so on, I was your caregiver. I was here at home working the desk and building and doing my ministry studies. And I called her up one day and I said, do you need any help? And I knew she needed help because she would reach out to me inadvertently
Yeah,
on social media.
yeah,
And that's how we met. And I went, I closed everything down and I went and go be the caregiver that she needed at the time as a certified nursing assistant. And we only sharing this win based on what you agree to share, to inspire our people that, service to humanity is the best work alive. We don't need a huge community when we have a diagnosis or we have a child or a parenting. But what we need is a person who make a solid decision that they're going to serve and serve powerfully. We're going to serve as an advocate and we're going to build that community. We're going to be that community member right there. And what Winnie is sharing, the big highlight, I think, is we actually almost get poisoned by monoxide. Um, that one day when we decided, I said, Win, I'm not going to leave you here in this home and go back home to my family. Else I'm going to put you in my vehicle. I'm going to take you home.
yeah.
And she agreed, but we put her feet down and make some calls. And that's the only reason why we're here on this podcast today. It's very special. It's a very special and a powerful moment. I mean, it seems like we can sit down and we can talk about it easily and with ease when, but you know what
Now,
was going on behind the
yeah,
scene.
you know now.
Right? I'd
Um,
also put my
now,
foot down in terms of where caregiving is and what my responsibility
yeah,
is as a certified nursing assistant. And that's what makes servicing and serving so powerful, because it's a combination of all the skills combined to be of service to people. So that's what that's about. When you hear she said Marsha was there and so
yeah.
on. I helped save this woman's life. And this is not bragging. What we're
Well,
saying is that all that we share here are stories of adversity is to help you to rise or to help you to come on board. You know, when you start out win, and I appreciate that. You said if you're out there, you're listening and you want to come on board with financial support or to share, subscribe, do so. Because all the stories here is it a life or death? Some price has been paid. And I really appreciate you for sharing that journey. Because probably would have never heard it from me just because of, what we, privacy and all that. But when we appreciate you, on your notes, you said you have reinvent your life. I know what that means because I was there in the hotel room with you for
yeah,
close to a week.
yeah.
A week.
We did
Well,
it. We did it. You guys close to a week.
close to a week.
We
If
ended
not
up
week, I think it's a
doing it
week.
close
But
to a week.
when we have to also give a shout out and a big thank you to Black Hill Energy, guys from Black Hill Energy, and those two,
Yeah,
I don't know who those
yeah,
two guys were, but
yeah. We still,
let's call them angels, okay?
we still don't know to this.
I don't know the names.
We still don't know to this day who actually diagnosed the problem.
Oh, this one is two of the guys from Black Hill
Yeah,
Energy. They weren't supposed to be on the block,
no.
mind you. Is the cops send them to come and help us
Yeah,
that day,
yeah,
right? And we
yeah,
have to shout out the Aspen police and the fire and all the people involved. I think response was advocate for we got response was involved, and also people you know them. The
yeah,
chief officer there from the fire department in Aspen.
yeah. No.
Um,
And when when push comes to shove, you have got to make those decisions, whether it's a tiny community or big community.
mhm.
You have got to make those decisions.
I
And
love it.
that's why I say today, while your family members are still alive and you have disabled kids, start making those decisions and start making those decisions around who's going to look after your child and who's going to support them.
That's powerful right there, because it's not, and there's just so much. I get excited about this, but we can get lost when we get the diagnosis. I'm saying we because I'm on the journey with our son, 2 years diagnosed with Down syndrome. But we can get lost in that worry and stuff of what's going to happen in the future, to the point where we never do what's needed now. So I love what you went there to get our act together. You as you put it. What does that mean? How do we get our act together? I know you're reinventing your life from the hotel room when you do all of this stuff with selling your home in Aspen, plus getting Lunazo, and we're going to talk about that too. But what do we do to get our act together as parents with our
Well,
child's different?
you sit down with people that you trust and say what, and be honest, say what happens if I get hit by a bus, if I get if myself or my husband gets hit by a bus, and who's going to take care of your child, and then you delegate who will be who.
Yes.
And if you have to hire professionals, in their chosen field, please do so. Because
Wow.
you as a mom and dad can't do it all, but you at least can delegate who will be who.
Wow. I know the backstory of everything, but I know when you say delegate and to get this plan together now. I know exactly what you're talking about. But for the person who's just on the journey and she's probably is our first child or is the second one or sometimes it's the fifth one who is unique. Yes,
Yeah.
we have a story that's coming up and it's this mother's fifth one. What does it mean to be able to delegate? What does it mean if she has no resources? What does she need? Who does she need to talk to?
Well, first of all, the resources out there, or you can talk to me. I can be a resource in the state of Arizona now. I have resources in the state of Arizona. I actually have resources statewide. And just, you gotta start somewhere. Whether you talk to me and let me do research on something, and then I'll let you guys take the ball. But you gotta start, you gotta start thinking about what happens if I land up in the hospital and my disabled child is orphan and they don't have any parents. And I would like you guys to start it early, to start the conversations early. I don't want you guys to wait until that child is 23 and then figure out from there. Because get those wills, get those pieces of paper, get those everything involved at young ages, so that that child can succeed.
I know how powerful that is to you because you have lost both of your parents and it was challenging and probably you're still working through getting stuff organized. Win, I am so grateful that you're here because as I told my listeners, I can't do this all by myself and I don't want to do it all by myself. It will be powerful. It would not be a powerful voice. How can people reach you? You said you're a resource. Give us, tell us where you can find your book.
You can ask me, reach me at Win.Charles75 on Facebook or a winning cup.webelieve.com or just Google my name. It will pop up as Win Charles podcast host, or they can listen to a winning cup on all audio devices, or they can listen to the artwork of CP on all audio devices too. And I am willing and able to be a silent witness and help you guys out.
Wow. Powerful stuff, guys. If you're there and you get that, we're going to put the information below in the show notes as well. So you can reach out to Win. She's saying she'll be a resource to help you to navigate starting early in preparation. When some of the challenges, okay, so we talk about starting early, but what are some of the challenges, as you realize that you face to the point where you can absolutely for sure encourage us to take action and take it now? What are some of the challenges that you encounter when parents don't prepare in advance?
Well,
start early?
Unfortunately, I had to prepare myself for losing my dad very, very quickly. And I saw him one day and the next day he was gone. So I saw him May 19th and I had already took time by myself to make those decisions. Unbeknownst to people, I stayed back in the hotel room to make those decisions because I knew he was going to either do the chemo treatment or not come home. And so I knew it was going to be not come home too. But I was hanging on to hope that he was going to be able to do chemo treatments or lung cancer treatments. But I made the decision back in 2010. I started making the decision. And one person in my life knows this, and she has been a silent witness in my life since we reconnected. And that's the funny thing, is I reconnected with this person in 2013. And it's interesting because we connected in a way that was very odd. We connected over both of us grieving her, both of us grieving and literally not knowing which way is up. And so she knew that I was trying to move out of Aspen since about 2013, and I just didn't have the opportunity to do it till now.
Wow. And that's when the word reinvention starts. I want to hear about the reinvention. I want to hear where you're at. Would you be willing to come back for part 2?
I will be willing to come back for part 2, and I will be willing to share my reinvention.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much. Our guest today is Miss Wynne Charles. She's an advocate for persons with cerebral palsy. She also was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. She's an author. She is a resource for persons. She's also advocating for us as parents, or you out there, if you have a child with that developmental diagnosis, to start the preparation early. Miss Wynne Charles has lost both of her parents. And from a very young age, she has to learn how to navigate grief and challenges. And here earlier, she just spoke of the most difficult, besides losing her parents, challenge that she faced is almost her own death with the poison of monoxide. They're up in Aspen. It's a public knowledge. It's up there. You can look it up. Wynne Charles, we thank you so much. And we're going to have you right back for part 2, where we're going to want to know, how are you reinventing yourself? What does that look like for a person with a developmental diagnosis? Guys, I will thank you so much for listening to Voice of Hope podcast. I told you, we're going to share stories of inspiration, adversities, challenges, victories to help you rise, overcome, and live your full potential in spite of a developmental diagnosis or in spite of the challenges that you face in life. Thanks to my financial partners who helped me to produce more and more podcasts to help you be motivated. And if you like what we're doing around there, you want to pitch $1 in or two, please feel free to do so. And also, this is the internet. You don't have to do anything if you don't want to. But what I know for sure is that all these beautiful messages and the inspiration of challenges, near-death situation, life, victory, resources is going to go out to help us rise, overcome, and leave our challenges. Until next time, walk good.